This is the final word, T20 World Cup Daily, day 20 and a half. The other half, the second half. Geoff Lemon and Matt Roller, we are in St Lucia. You've got to think about it sometimes to remember what country it actually is. It's starting to rain. The match is over. The show is brought to you by Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City. West Indies played England. Matt, of ESPN Crick Info, please tell us about it in the space of 30 seconds.
West Indies were asked to bat first by England. They were at best par, probably about 20-25 short. I think that's what Darren Sammy said at his stadium, the Darren Sammy Stadium. It's quite a cool thing to play.
Technically cricket ground, not stadium. There's a big sign behind us that says cricket ground. So
made to look right, Mike. Anyway, they get unders. England look like they're wobbling in the chase. They make a good start in the power play. Then suddenly they lose a couple of wickets and you're thinking this could get a bit tasty. Then Bairstow comes in and smacks them. And Salt takes 30 off and over and ends up 87 not out of 47 balls, which is generally going to win you quite a lot of games.
I should cardinal sin, never interrupt a 30-second summary. I apologise. I've done the wrong thing. It was my fault. But the West Indies also did the wrong thing. It was a weird sort of innings. It was a weird batting innings first up. It felt very much light after they made nearly 220 against Afghanistan the other day when they were put into bat by England. I thought they might have been a misstep. I thought this batting lineup, the way they went at the bowling the other night, they'll do that again, and they just didn't quite do it again. They they were there and thereabouts. They were taking sort of 9 off and over here, or 8 there, or 10 there, and they got through the power play at about that sort of rate, at about 9 and over. And they also lost Brandon King to an injury. Did you pick up what the injury actually was?
Yeah, it's a side strain, and I think, Rodman sort of suggested maybe he'll get through the tournament, but given there's 10 days left, I think a side strain it seems like it's done and dusted. I think obviously didn't take the field. I think Carl Mayers will probably come in as a replacement into the squad in the next day or two.
Right. So they're going along at a decent rate, but just not as good a rate as it felt like they were going the other night. And the other thing we saw the other night is that there can be periods where it's a bit more difficult to score, particularly if you've got a good spinner on. There were likely to be a few slower overs through the middle, and they didn't sort of front load their innings in the way they did the other night that allowed them to get up to that 220 sort of score. And Nicholas Pooran came in and played a strange sort of innings after that swashbuckling 98. He ends up making 38 off 34, was it? And Johnson Charles at the other end, something similar. He might have been the 38 off 34, Pooran's the 34 off 32. But basically, they're at a run of ball, both of them, and they both bat through a long chunk of the innings and then get out. Johnson Charles gets out trying to lift the rate, attacks Moeen. But yeah, there was that strange period. So there's the 7th over, Mark Wood gets hit for 6 first ball. Pooran absolutely middles it out of the ground. Then the next 5 balls of that Wood over go for 3. Adil Rashid bowls an over that goes for 3. Moeen bowls one that goes for 7. Rashid bowls one where 1-6 gets hit and it goes for 10 or 12. And then Moeen gets Johnson Charles out. And it was just the sound of the brakes coming on.
Yeah, it was a curious innings. You're right. I think there were 51 dots in the innings, which the stat is one of these incredible stats with a ton of qualifiers. I think it's the most dot balls in a 180-plus innings at a men's T20 World Cup on a Wednesday in Bairstow, St Lucia. But
the Darren Sammy cricket ground, not stadium, where it is raining a little bit.
Important to clarify, not stadium.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of dots, and it's this has been the perennial question for West Indies in T20 cricket, and they've won 2 World Cups with a similar formula, so it probably doesn't matter. But maybe the game has evolved a bit. It's always been a sort of dot or boundary approach. They're not the best team at knocking the ball around. I did feel today like they sort of tried to see Rashid off to some extent. Rashid has a great record against West Indies historically. I think he'd gone at less than 6 and over against them across his career, and that's in 18, 19 games, so a big sample because England always play West Indies at T20 cricket.
Yeah.
So they've really, really struggled against him, and it felt like the plan was knock him about, see him off, don't do anything stupid. But they ended up after sort of getting caught in two minds almost, and they had I actually thought the turning point over, bizarrely, was the one where Livingston bowled, because it was a completely, it was a gamble from Butler, 15th over, I think, of the innings, or maybe even 16th over of the innings, bring Livingston into the attack, leg spinner for his first over, got absolutely carted for a couple of sixes down the ground by Rothman Power. But when that last ball was caught at short third, that ended up being the turning point for me, because you then had a brilliant over, superb over from Jofra Archer to Nicholas Pooran, which was just right on the money. Yorker, one edged over short third for 4. The last ball nicks him off. And then Sam Curran bowled a good one as well. Rashid bowled a good one at the end, and England suddenly dragged it back. West Indies were all sort of building towards this back-end launch that sort of half happened but never really did. And 180 felt solid, but it didn't feel too many.
It was funny, wasn't it? So it's 20 off the Livingston over and then the wicket at the end, 4 off the Archer over, 19 off a Mark Wood over, 6 off the Curran over. Archer finishes it off with about a dozen at the end. It was sort of going like low, high as the rain really starts to come down, which is going to make things interesting with this laptop that I'm holding. We might have to rethink how we're going about things here. Absolutely seamless. Costume change. Now... So you end up with a score. It feels like I felt 9 and over. England would be very happy with that, very comfortable with that, and they looked very comfortable with that. Buttler comes out with Salt, and Salt's the more aggressive, but Butler's able to find boundaries just by leg glancing, basically. They keep getting wider deliveries. I mean, obviously, Akeal Hosein bowls a tidy first over because he always does, the left-arm spin around the wicket. But as soon as they're facing any of the quicks, it seems like it's relatively easy for England to tick over. They go through that power play looking decent, pretty much up with the rate, and I just felt from really early on that they had clocked this chase, they were happy with the chase, and it was the game was within their control at that point. Their mission at the toss had been achieved to keep West Indies to a score like this and then follow it.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that Butler-Salt dynamic has been really interesting for England since that became the sort of nailed-on opening partnership, probably in the past 12 months or so, where Butler throughout his career has pretty much always been the most aggressive player in any given partnership, hasn't he? Because he's the freak. He was the guy who came in and scooped everything. Whereas now he actually sort of slots in behind, so almost says, "You're the guy that's going to go at the start. I'll just bide my time and find the right time to go." Salt was, I think, 35 off 20 at the end of the power play, really going pretty nicely. I think a couple of sixes, one off Dre Russ and one off Alzari, just hooking over the short boundary at fine leg. But yeah, that does lead me on to one of the interesting points, I think, about Salt's innings, which he just spoke about to us in the press after, was he said he's worked quite a lot with Kieran Pollard since he's come into the England camp, and he said that the one sort of very, very simple thing that Pollard has said in terms of an approach to chasing is because you quite often have these winds blowing a big way and you have slightly skewed boundary dimensions, he just told him if you go 8s from one end and 12s from the other, then you get 200 every time. Right. And that was basically the approach that Salt took. If you look at what his sort of runs per ball were in each of the two ends, there's a huge difference between when he was at the near end with the short leg side boundary hitting downwind versus sort of into the wind coming across but downwind really, versus the other end where he was a lot steadier and just knocking the ball about at the other end. And I thought Salt played really, really well tonight in a way that I don't think Phil Salt could have played this innings 12 months ago. I think he's improved enough and matured enough. He's now 27. He's sort of heading towards that prime of his career. Back in the day, he was a good time, not a long time, Phil Salt. He was a guy that would get you off to a great start, and in exactly that same position, 35 off 20, he would have stuck one up in the air, trying to hit a left-arm spinner over mid-wicket, and would have handed the baton over, and that was his role, so it was kind of fine, but it was also, that was him. Yep. Whereas tonight, it was, I can soak this up a bit in the middle, I can let someone else do the hard work for a bit, and then I can absolutely take someone down when I feel set and walk off having won a massive World Cup game for my country against the co-host. And it was a top innings, I thought.
The wind thing was interesting. We saw Bairstow pop one up into the wind that went sailing over. We saw Moeen absolutely middle a pull shot that then just sort of stopped. It was like when the Wile E. Coyote goes off a cliff and then runs in midair. It just hung there in the air and then eventually dropped down inside the field to be caught. Johnson Charles took that catch off Russell, wasn't it? He was a little unlucky there, Moeen. But it brings Bairstow in, and Bairstow, in a way, I thought Bairstow played the more important innings in a way because the spin was slowing things down, and you had Moti had come on after Hosein had bowled well. Moti comes on, also left arm spin. Then Chase comes on, and he gets Butler out with one that hits him low on the ankle on the full, and it has to be assumed to go straight on, so it's hitting the stumps. It's given out correctly on the field. Butler reviews, he's not saved. And Bairstow just goes, okay, well, if this is going to get a little bit difficult, I'm just going to put the foot down and I'm going to take some risks here. And he started taking them on, especially when Hosein came on, smashed him out of the attack. When Alzari Joseph came on, he nailed him. And then when Hosein came back for his fourth over, Bairstow takes risks. He slog sweeps. He nails one for 6. He sweeps along the ground for 4. He nicks one past his stumps for 4. And that 16 off the over, that's what basically kills the chase for England, I thought. Yeah. They get to a point there where they need 40 from 30 balls, which should be easy for them. And then Phil Salt's sort of ritual destruction towards the end there, taking 30 off and over, it was just a point of emphasis, really, rather than something necessary to finish the chase.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It felt like it was pretty much done by then, but yeah, to turn it from 40 or 5 overs into 10 or 4 overs is still a pretty good statement. But yeah, I think I think Bairstow is in such an interesting spot in his career. I'm sure we've spoken hundreds of times before about him being written off at various stages in his career, and how he had the longest winter of any England player. He was the only one that did the ODI World Cup in India, then the Tests in India, then the IPL in India, and basically, I think he had some kind of secondary residency by the end. I think he changed his visa status to, I think he was a tourist when he flew back to the UK, but. Yeah, it was. It's been such a weird time for him. He's really not had a lot of success during that time. He's come into this T20 team. He would ideally have loved to be opening the batting. I'm sure he would have opened the batting in the last T20 World Cup, but for his leg break. And he's coming in.
It's not his bowling, that's his ankle.
Yeah, he's coming in at number 4. It's probably not his favourite role, but it's something that he has adjusted to and is perfectly capable at, as he showed tonight. And he's done nothing in previous T20 World Cups. The 31 he scored against Namibia in the last game was his highest ever score in T20 World Cups, and he started playing them in 2012. So this is a huge thing for him, and a huge opportunity for him to sort of right the wrongs he feels of missing out in 2022 and the sort of great injustice that was that leg break for him. So it was a really top innings, and something that we've not actually seen a lot of from Bairstow of late, coming in and making this huge impact in the middle order. And yeah, from an England point of view, if he's capable of doing that, Brook wasn't even used tonight, having looked pretty good in the previous game. Nor was Livingston with the bat. It suddenly looks like a statement win, and if they're probably 1 win from 2 will get them through, and they play South Africa and USA, and we'll feel pretty comfortable of getting into the semis from here, which feels, I was here on. You were here as well on the other. Oh, maybe had you gone?
The Scotland night, no.
Scotland? But that night I was here, and that was Saturday, and today's Wednesday at the time of recording, and suddenly England have gone from the brink of elimination to really should make the semi-finals. These T20 World Cups are pretty crazy.
Yeah, well, they'll be playing South Africa in a couple of days, so more to come there. Quick break, then the Hall of Fame. Final word, T20 World Cup Daily, brought to you by Westfield. Right, Naomi Campbell, Claudia Schiffer, Cindy Crawford, probably people you're too young to have heard of, Matt, but what do these fashion icons have in common? No, they were not pinned on the wall next to Mark Waugh in Adam's bedroom. They got their start through elite model management. Pay attention, this could be relevant to you. You could be next, Matt. You could be next. If you or someone you know fancies yourself or themselves as a clothes horse, come to Westfield, London on the 29th of June between 11am and 4pm for an exclusive one-day casting event. Nothing dodgy, just a chance to launch a modelling career and join Kendall Jenner on the elite model management roster. If you're still not convinced, remember how well Shane Warne did when he aligned himself with someone named Jenner. That's how things work. Westfield, London, the shopping mall for model citizens. Hall of Fame, we've talked too much Bairstow for it to be the fact that Bairstow rolled into a press conference after the Namibia game, popping off at everybody, at various of our colleagues, Simon Wilde and somebody else, I can't remember, he was lining up a few of them, and has that anger about him, and he's coming out and playing accordingly. What else? What jumped out? What caught your eye today?
I really enjoyed Nicholas Pooran yapping away behind the stumps of Phil Salt to the extent that he had to repeatedly pull out of deliveries, having previously dropped Phil Salt, who went on to be the match winner and the player of the match.
We probably should have mentioned the drop.
I mean, it was, I think it was a relatively tough chance, a toe ender, a sort of really thin nig that needed Snicko to confirm. But yeah, given what Pooran did here on Monday night, one of the great nights of his T20 career so far, to follow that up with a go slow, a drop of the main man, and then constantly chirping away in his ear, I did think was a pretty good night from Nicky B.
Yeah, he was very vocal, and Phil Salt, also a wicketkeeper, obviously, was saying, he's like, well, I wouldn't do it to you. I would show you respect. Pooran was not showing him a lot of respect.
Which, by the way, Phil Salt definitely wouldn't do, because his language behind the stumps is probably worse than anyone else's you ever hear. It's one of the great treats when you see him listed as, if you're watching a game on TV and you see him listed as keeper, one of the great treats to hear 20 overs of uncut Phil Salt chat.
I did have something else for the Hall of Fame, but it slipped my mind. I'm sure it was great, and that's why I've forgotten about it. But anyway, I think the important thing is the Super 8s are off to a bang. USA nearly rolled South Africa earlier. You can hear about that on the other show today that Adam did earlier today. That's it. It's about 1 a.m. These late starts, they're a thing. And that's enough from us. Geoff Lemon, Matt Roller from St Lucia. We'll be here again for more cricket when England plays South Africa and a bunch of other stuff. Keep your eyes keep your ears on the feed, keep your eyes on the skies, and watch out for enemy aircraft. The show's brought to you by Westfield. You can get the ad-free feed on patreon.com/thefinalword, and we'll see you soon.